Hey everybody, neoflynn here, and it is Sports Shorts time once again. A couple things I wanted to get to before we get into the picks. First of all, the UFC had their big heavyweight fight between Brock Lesnar and Cain Velasquez last weekend, and some people were surprised by the outcome. I was not so much, because I knew Cain knew how to fight. And Brock has a tendency to kind of overwhelm guys at the beginning, and that's how he wins a lot of his fights. And if you weather that storm and get through that, you have a chance to beat him. Frank Mir showed that when he beat him the first time. And that's how you can beat Brock. And Cain did that. He weathered the storm that Brock came out with in the first bit, and after that, he kind of worked him over with his striking. Took him down, made it, hit him with that one good shot, spun him around, made him look silly, and when it got down to the ground, just, pounded him out. So, huge win for Cain Velasquez, huge win for the Spanish community to have, a heavyweight champion, the first ever in the UFC. So, hopefully there'll be a rematch. I'd love to see those two fight again. We'll see who Cain Velasquez gets in there against next, but UFC has definitely overtaken boxing as the contact sport to watch nowadays. You don't even hardly hear people talk about boxing at all anymore, especially when the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight didn't happen. That was, one of the few fights that could get people talking. So it's very interesting to see how UFC has overtaken it. The other thing I wanted to get into, with all of the sports and kind of going in full swing here, you got basketball back, you got NHL back, football's in the meat of its season, and baseball is winding up. So real quick to touch on the World Series, if you guys remember back to my baseball picks, I did have San Francisco in the World Series, and that one actually came through. Did not have Texas. I was very surprised by how Texas has done in the playoffs, but very happy to see anyone but the Yankees in there as far as the American League is concerned. So I'm sticking with my Giants. They look very good. They got by their biggest test, which was to beat Cliff Lee. So that's, the number one thing that Texas had going for it. And, Lincecum matched him pitch for pitch. They both had their struggles, but Cliff Lee's became a little worse than what Lincecum's was. So very interesting. It'll be very interesting to see what happens tonight. I think if the Giants go up 2-0, it may not go 7 like I said. But I look for Texas to come back and win this one tonight. And I don't know. I don't think Texas will sweep at home. I think they'll win 2 out of 3 at home, and I think it'll come back with Texas up 3-2, and I think the Giants will win the last 2 at home. But we'll see. But the Giants are a fun team to watch. With Brian Wilson, the closer, that guy is just certifiably insane. They're just a fun team to watch. A lot of personalities on that team. And real quick on basketball, a couple things I wanted to touch on. Number one, my team, the Utah Jazz, they lost their opening game last night to Denver. With Boozer gone, we're a different team. But I think we'll still compete in the Western Conference. I think we'll be one of the top seeds come playoff time. And, we can give anybody a run come playoff time. I will say this much. I think the Lakers' run in the Western Conference, I think will come to an end this year. I don't know if we'll beat them. Oklahoma City can beat them. Dallas is always good. So I think someone will finally knock down the Lakers and we'll get somebody else in the Western Conference Finals. Lost my train of thought there. As far as the Eastern Conference goes, everybody's making a big deal out of, Miami losing their first game and looking pretty terrible doing it, at least for the first 3 quarters. But you know what? It's going to take those 3 time to learn how to play together. They didn't play together in the preseason, I don't think at all. Did they have all 3 of them? At least not very much. So it's going to take them a few games to learn how to play with each other. But don't get it twisted. Miami's going to be in the race and probably going to be the team to beat. But Boston is one of the the few teams that can give them a run for the money because Boston's got their own big 3. So I wouldn't take too much into that. Just like I wouldn't take too much into Cleveland beating Boston the next night. Cavs fans want to make a big deal out of that, but it would, it was Boston, an old Boston team playing on back-to-back nights and having to travel in between. So don't read too much into it. But I will make those two predictions that, Miami is still the team to beat in the East, and I think the Lakers will not represent the Western Conference in the NBA Finals this year. We'll see. That'll be my bold predictions for this year. So let's get into the picks. We'll recap last week. Had another 500 week. Was looking pretty terrible after the college games, but the NFL got me back. Go do a quick recap. Had Notre Dame 6.5 point favorite over Navy. I told you guys that one scared me a little bit because of that offense Navy runs, and Notre Dame didn't know how to defend it, and Navy ran roughshod over them. So we missed that one. The only one in the college game that paid off was the ATM. Finally coming through for me, and that was Michigan State with a huge comeback to beat Northwestern. It was insane watching that game. But it was insane, how they came back. I didn't get to watch it, unfortunately. Then Oklahoma laying the big egg against Mizzou, so we missed that one. And then finally, Georgia at Kentucky. I thought Kentucky would give them a run, but Georgia got up on them early. Kind of closed up there at the end, but Georgia pretty much controlled that whole game. So 1 for 3 in the college game, or 1 in 3, in the college game. Moving over to the NFL. The only one that we missed in the NFL was San Francisco at Carolina, and I dare say if Alex Smith doesn't get injured, the San Francisco still wins that game. But Carolina was able to, after the pick by David Carr, set up the go-ahead field goal, and Carolina pulled that one out. We had New England at San Diego. New England, 2.5 point dog, and they pretty much controlled that entire game. So like I said, I wasn't sure why San Diego was the favorite, and that game kind of proved it out. And then we had New York Giants, the 3-point dogs at Dallas. That was the Monday Night Football game. They knocked out Tony Romo, and they pretty much knocked out the Cowboys. Sorry to say to white girls, Asian please. It's not looking so good for your Cowboys, buddy. Sorry to say that. I think their season's pretty much done. And then finally we had Cincinnati at Atlanta. Atlanta, the 3.5 point favorite. They went up huge. Cincinnati came back, but Atlanta was able to hang on. So once again, we went 4-4, 3-1 in the NFL, 1-3 in college. Brings our total record this season to 20-20. So we're still floating at 500. Hopefully this week can change that. So let's get right into this week's picks. We got, starting off with the largest outdoor cocktail party. Florida technically at Georgia, even though it's a neutral site game in Jacksonville. So these two teams right now are two teams headed in very different directions that started the season in very different ways. Florida looked good at the beginning. Well, I shouldn't say looked good. They looked okay. The first game was terrible, but Georgia looked terrible to start the season, and now they've kind of rebounded. They've won 3 in a row. Florida's actually lost 3 in a row. Everything points to Georgia winning this game except the history in the series, and that is that Florida wins the game. So I'm going to go out on a limb and pick Florida in the upset. Georgia's getting 2.5 points. Just something about it, Florida and Georgia. I think the dogs are gator bait this week, so we'll see what happens. But I will pick Florida in that one. Then we got Utah at Air Force. Utah, the 7-point favorites. Utah has looked insanely good this year. Undefeated, ranked in the top 10. Air Force does run that tricky offense just like Navy does. A little bit different version of it, but that's the only thing that kind of scares me. But Utah, their offense can put up points, and their defense is great. So they're favored by 7 on the road in that one, and I'm going to pick them to hold up their end of the deal and go ahead and win that one. Next up, got a huge game in the Pac-10. Oregon, #1 team in the country, going on the road at USC, who, despite their struggles this year and the off-season controversy, they're on probation. They can't win the Pac-10. They can't go to a bowl game. This is pretty much their bowl game. A chance to knock off the #1 team in the country, and if this season's taught us anything, #1 team in the country going on the road, they're #1 in the 2 polls. They're not #1 in the BCS, oddly enough, but #1 in the 2 polls, and they're going on the road. And if these seasons taught us anything, #1 goes on the road, #1 loses. Oregon, the 7-point favorite. That offense has put up ridiculous numbers, but their defense is not that as spectacular as their offense. USC, Same kind of deal. Their offense can move the ball. Their defense is a little bit suspect. So it looks to be a very high-scoring game. But I like USC to pull the upset and knock Oregon off. Next up, we have Michigan State at Iowa. Undefeated Michigan State team traveling on the road to a very good Iowa team. They lost to Wisconsin. That's their only blemish. And Iowa playing at home. You know, Michigan State escaped from Northwestern with a victory. I don't think they'll escape Iowa with victory. So I take Iowa in the 6.5 points. Moving over to the NFL. First up, we have Denver at San Francisco, technically, even though the game is being played in London. San Francisco has announced that they're going to start Troy Smith. Great college player, hasn't done much in the NFL. Denver coming off giving up, 59 points to freaking Oakland, and then having to travel to London. It's only a 1-point game, and that it's San Francisco's favored by 1 point. I like San Francisco to pick up the victory. They lost a tough one last week after getting their first win the week before, and I look for them to rebound against a very suspect Denver team. Next up, we have Miami going to Cincinnati. I picked against my Bengals last week, and it actually paid off for me. Sorry to say I'm going to pick against my Bengals again this week. I think Miami is the better team, even on the road. Cincinnati they made a nice comeback against Atlanta. They looked terrible in the first half. And somehow Turner just came roughshod in the second half. But like I said, Miami seems to be the better team, so we'll stick with Miami, who's actually the 2-point dog in that one. Cincinnati getting the bump in points for playing at home. Another road dog, Tennessee at San Diego. I picked against San Diego last week, and it worked out for me, so we're going to ride that horse again. Tennessee, the 3.5-point dog. In that one. And last but not least, this will be the ATM pick of the week. Moving it over to the NFL side this week. And that is Pittsburgh at New Orleans. Pittsburgh may be one of the best teams in the NFL. New Orleans maybe looks to be suffering the age-old Super Bowl hangover. They just dropped the ball against Cleveland, literally, and just got walloped in that one. And I look for them to make a statement and say, you know what, we're New Orleans, we're the defending champs, we're still here. And it can go a lot to, improving their season if they take care of business against Pittsburgh. And they are playing at home, which bodes well for them. So that will be the ATM pick of the week. So there you go, guys. Once again, Florida over Georgia, Utah over Air Force, USC over Oregon, Iowa over Michigan State, San Francisco over Denver, Miami over Cincinnati, Tennessee over San Diego, and New Orleans over Pittsburgh. So there's the picks, guys. Hope you guys are enjoying the sports shorts. I'm enjoying making them. And be sure and come back next week, and we'll see how we did. Take care, guys.